Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown. This is the Caring Conference, and this is our final presentation on how to keep courage. So we're going to look at how do we ensure that courage is available to us, because as we've talked about all day long, courage is something that we use throughout our day. So here's the definition. We've been talking about it, but here's the official definition: the ability to do something that frightens one. Strength in the face of pain or grief. How about that? We've been talking about that as our ability to stay present with our carees and with ourselves during caregiving, which is a time of pain and suffering. Every day we are called, our courage is called upon. So some questions for you to think about. When do you feel most frightened? What really scares you about circumstances or situations or the future or tomorrow? And then who intimidates you? And it could be someone in the family. It could be someone on your healthcare team. It could just be someone that you encounter once in a while. They have a tendency to intimidate you. You can feel at a loss for words, for instance, when you're with them. And what are the situations that you encounter that intimidate you? And what are the responsibilities that feel like they are just overwhelming? We are getting specific about situations and relationships because these are the circumstances during which we use our courage. We are courageous when we stand up to someone who intimidates us. We are courageous when we stick with a situation that intimidates us. We are courageous when we speak honestly about when we feel overwhelmed. And we are courageous when we face our fear. And I wonder, just out of curiosity, what's the fear that you're facing right now? Feel free to share in the chat room. I was thinking about what are courageous acts. And so I've put together a series of acts that we can take that really take courage. So it takes courage to speak up and speak out. Sometimes it's actually the courage to say, stay silent. And I would love if anybody has an example of when they were silent and now say, oh my gosh, that was courageous. Certainly we are courageous when we take action and when we are just being. We talk about in the 6 stages that the 5th stage, the transitioning stage, requires us to shift from doing to being, and that's courageous. There might be other times in our life where we feel like, you know what, I just have to be with this. Sometimes we have to be with an imperfect situation. Sometimes we have to be with our humanity. We just have to be. There's the courage of letting go. We talked about that earlier. Dwayne is sharing something really powerful in the chat room. I'm always fearful of the responsibilities revolving around my father's care, trying to find the balance between his wishes and what is right. And I am fearful of him feeling that I've let him down. Yeah, that's it, right? I think we all can relate to that fear. We also are courageous when we ask. We have been talking about asking for help and support. That takes courage. That we have a need and that we are openly saying, I need this. Will you help me with it? That's vulnerability. That's courage. Sometimes it takes courage to defy. And I think oftentimes in a caregiving experience, we feel like we've received instructions from the healthcare system, and we know the instructions are either illogical or unreasonable or just not practical. And so we define them, knowing that the best thing to do is to defy them. think there's courage in receiving help, support, compliments, opportunities, a second chance. All of that is courageous. And this idea that we can start over at any moment in our day and in our life is courageous. That we don't have to be in this moment who we were in the moment before. We can give ourselves this chance to start over. And then it can take courage to forgive. Trust is a part of forgiveness. We are trusting someone. We are trusting ourselves with forgiveness. Certainly we know we don't have to forget when we forgive, but we are trusting ourselves. Letting go is part of forgiveness too. So Patty is sharing about the remaining silent. So yesterday, Patty writes in the chat room, my roommate said some things and I chose to remain silent. I'm so glad I did. See, that's the thing. I think we are constantly, honestly, making a decision about when to speak and when to remain silent. And I think that that can be exhausting during our day. And I also think that sometimes choosing to remain silent today and giving ourselves the option to speak up tomorrow can be helpful. So right now, maybe I'm going to stay silent. I'm going to reflect. I'm going to find the right words. And tomorrow I'm going to say something. I think it's important for us to remember just because we remain silent now doesn't mean that we're not going to speak up tomorrow. It just means that we're going to choose the right time to speak up. So there's courage in giving. Yes, there is. And there is courage in knowing that there's a limit to how much we can give, that we don't have to give all the time. We don't have to give everything. We can decide what's the right amount of giving. And the courage to change. I remember when I was young, I was probably 7 or 8, I had a terrible temper. And I actually was in fist fights with kids in the neighborhood on a regular basis. And I remember standing in our house after a fist fight thinking, I want to be different. I want to be different. And then I thought, going forward, I'm going to count to 10 before I hit anyone. I mean, this is such a, I mean, I just can't believe I used to do this, but honestly, that's what I did. Okay, so I did stand in the house and say to myself, count to 10 the next time you're angry, and that will help you not get into a fist fight. And so that's what I did going forward. I counted to 10. So we all can change. We all can change. We also can adjust. We have talked about that today, and Deb was really talking about that during her presentation. What's the adjustment that works better for you? Just because it was that way doesn't mean that it always has to be that way. What's the adjustment? And we can recognize that there's adjustments we make because of changes in our life and changes as to who we are in our life. So an adjustment for me at 58 is because I'm 58, so my energy might be different than it was when I was 48, and I am wise to make the adjustment. And I actually see this with my dad. It's been very difficult for him to adjust to the idea that he is 90 and that there are limitations in his day, and I watch him resist that and fight that. And it is hard for him, and it is hard for us. And I think I want to be different than that. I want to adjust. I want to be realistic about what I can do in my life and what's possible for me in my life. There's courage in admitting a mistake. We talked about courage in forgiving, but there's also courage in asking for forgiveness. I was wrong. I made a mistake. I'm sorry I lost my temper. I'm sorry I said that out of spite. We can do those things though. Okay, so those are different ways that we can look to use our courage. Okay, and I think because we call on our courage so often, it's important for us to think about how do we keep it? We talked earlier about this in the chat room, this idea that we need this muscle. So let's think about courage as a muscle that needs exercise and breaks. So we're going to work it, let it rest. Work it, let it rest. And I'm going to actually share some reflections for you. You are welcome to jot down notes or share in the chat room. So I'm going to share an insight about courage and then ask you a question about what that can mean for you. Okay, so courage needs your truth. It's very difficult for us to be in denial and be courageous because truth and courage are very much related. So what's the truth about the times when you feel too tired to continue? So what's the truth about the length of your day, the amount that you do during your day, who drains you during your day, and what drains you during your day? What's the truth about that? And if you can understand that truth, then you can at least minimize, if maybe avoid. So for instance, I have a colleague and I just met her for dinner the other day and she was talking about how she stays up late. She's always done this and she said, I have no idea why I do it. I'm not doing anything that's productive or useful or helpful. And then she's tired the next day. So for her, it's just saying, my day is done. I'm okay to go to sleep, giving herself permission to end the day at a normal time. That's how she keeps courage in a better place. Because when we are tired, it's hard to draw up our courage. We are just too tired. And that's why we want to pay attention to what tires us so that we don't lose our courage to it. Knowing that we call on courage so much during our day. Okay, so courage needs your faith. So how will you trust your courage? This is very much related to how do you know this is the right risk to take? So what do you know about your wisdom? What do you understand about your courage? And how does that wisdom and knowledge help you trust your courage? So you might know that you are most courageous when you can remain calm. You can step forward, you can share honestly if you remain calm. You might also have the insight that you feel best about courage if you remain calm because the next day you feel awkward about having an explosion of emotion. But you might also be on the other side of it. You might say, I feel better when I'm expressive, that I feel better about being courageous when I'm expressive about my emotions. It all depends on what's right for you. So how do you trust your courage? And take note of your courageous actions so that you can track the theme and the trends around your courage. Okay, so courage needs practice. So if it's a muscle, and if we rely on it, we have to practice it. So how will you practice your courage today? So there's that great saying that we've all heard, we grew up with it, which is never put off for tomorrow what you can do today. And that's really an expression of how do you practice your courage. I use a book to help me with my actions and to-do lists, and it's a journal which helps you organize your day. And one of the questions in the journal every day is, what are you putting off? Because you are draining your energy when you are putting off something that you think, I really need to do that. So maybe it's not always front of mind, but it's in the back of your mind, and it's a worry, and it's a drainer of your energy. The courage of doing it actually frees up your energy, which I think is so fascinating. So you can practice courage just by doing simple things every day that you feel like is pushing you a little bit. And that way, when you have to do the big push, you're used to the little pushes. So you're not going from, oh, I haven't done anything courageous to, oh gosh, I've got to do something hugely courageous. You're in a position of, well, I've been doing courageous things on a regular basis. This is a little bigger, but I have the experience so I can do it. Okay, so how are you going to practice courage today? Okay, so Gina is sharing something really helpful. She writes in the chat room, my truth is that I'm easily affected by my environment. I practice my courage by limiting my time around negative people so I can be my best. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That is something I am working on. That is a work in progress for me, Gina. So I appreciate your insight and your courage to put it into practice, to make it your reality. Okay. It also needs our rest, right? So we've been talking about how often we use it. Well, we have got to give it a rest at times. So if courage needs rest, when will you rest your courage? So here's what's kind of interesting about delaying an action. I think delaying an action is very different than procrastinating. So we were just talking really about procrastinating. I know I have to do something. It's important that I do it. I'm a little scared to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'll wait till tomorrow. That's a different decision than saying, okay, using Elizabeth's presentation as an example, I've got to have an important conversation. I know it's important. I'm going to do it. And the best day for me to do it is tomorrow after a good night's sleep. I am committing to do it. I am just being intentional about when I do it. So that's very different than procrastinating. I want to mention something about procrastinating. The more you procrastinate, the more behind you get in your life. So if you have a fear, which allows you to if you have a fear and you say, I'm not strong enough to face this fear, it gives you permission to say that about all your fears. And then your fears stack up, and before you know it, you're behind in your life. If you can face a fear on a regular basis, you are ahead of your life. You are moving at a nice pace. So if you're deliberate about when you use your courage, you are being deliberate about when you give your courage rest. There might be times when you think, I am tired, I need to rest my courage, and I recognize this is the right time. And you can always say, I'm tired. So forgive me if my words seem a little harsh. It's important that I say this now. I need whatever it might be. So a couple thoughts in the chat room. So Dwayne is sharing, my truth is I often give too much of myself to others. I practice my courage to set boundaries so that I may rest and give my best self to others. And I would also say to keep your best self for yourself as well. That's helpful too. And Janine is sharing, my truth is that I'm highly sensitive empath and I can feel what's being said and not being said. I need to have time away so I can recharge the battery. So it's so helpful to know who we are, right? And that each of us has a different experience and perspective, which means we use courage in the way that's right for us. Okay, so courage needs your attention. So here's the other action to take, which is, what will you do or say that you've been putting off? And sometimes it's doing or saying to ourselves that we've been putting off. I think about this idea of exercising. If we have not exercised in a while, we feel like we first have to lose weight before we can join the gym. And that really is not the truth. That today is the right day to join the gym or start the exercise. I didn't swim during the pandemic, and so when our outdoor community pool opened in late May, I thought, I'm just going to go and just see what happens. And it was hard. And what I did is kept going, knowing it was hard. And that I would just say to myself, do what you can, do what you can, do what you can. And then I kept doing what I could until I was back to what I used to be able to do. So there's courage in knowing that you're starting maybe not at your best self and you're giving yourself time to get to your better self. Okay, and Corey is sharing in the chat room. My truth is that when I feel incompetent or incapable to accomplish a certain task, I will procrastinate and get more upset with myself for procrastinating. When I can face the fear and break it into smaller, doable pieces, I feel relief that I was able to start working on the task. That is beautiful. I will also sometimes work out my default plan if there's a mistake. So if I do something and I think, wow, that was a clunker or that was a big fail, I think, okay, if it does fail, what's my action? What are my words? And then I feel better because I know how I'm taking care of the failure. And I also know that there's a failure today and tomorrow's another day. How I failed yesterday means that tomorrow I just have a better chance of being successful. Oh gosh, Lauren is sharing in the chat room, procrastination equals self-punishment. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so thank you all for sharing in the chat room. That's really helpful. And it's really interesting to think about procrastination as really requiring our courage because we're facing a fear of what will happen when we actually do what it is that we think or we must do. And we're worried about what it's going to be like. And we can put help and support in place to actually be okay. Regardless of what happens, we're going to be okay. So the bottom line is you have the courage to do it. So think about all the stories of courage you heard today. You can keep these stories with you to keep you company, to know that we're all out there fighting the good fight. We're all looking to find the courage, and we are in support of you as you use your courage to really build a good life for yourself, regardless of the circumstances of your life. As that priest told me, God wants you to be happy, and we do too. Okay, so just a quick update for you, and that is about our next conference. So we're going to do our next conference, the Caring Conference, with a theme of our treasured transformations. Now that's the theme today. I might change it, but that's what hit me the other day. So that's going to happen March 25th. And we do put out a call for presentations. So if you're interested, the call for presentations will go out on December 15th, and then the deadline to submit is January 28th. Okay, thank you guys so much for being here. This was really wonderful. And I want to do our grand prize. So everybody bear with me. And I think what I'm going to do is thank all of those who are watching the recordings and the archive. Thank you all so much for being with us. And I'm going to stop the recording and we'll get our grand prize winner figured out. Okay.